Delacroix mansion slept in silence. Even during the day, the place seemed suffocated by a calm too ancient to be natural, as if the house itself was learning to breathe sparingly, afraid to wake something that had once been sealed within its walls. Ezra Delacroix descended the stairs with the care of someone treading on his own memory. The silence of his footsteps echoed on the marble like a restrained whisper. He held in his hand a note, short, direct, sent by a former employee of the house who had disappeared more than a decade ago. "Room 9 is clear. There's something you need to see." That number made him feel uncomfortable. Almost no one mentioned Room 9. It was one of those spaces that existed on the fringes of the house, purposefully forgotten. Ezra had never dared to enter it. The doorknob was made of old iron. It was cool to the touch. When he turned it, he felt a slight creak, not from the metal, but from time. The door opened slowly, revealing a dusty, stuffy space. The light that flooded the room lifted particles into the air like small, restless souls. The smell was of damp linen, dry wood, and something else sweet. A scent he didn't recognize, but which seemed familiar. On the opposite wall, between the furniture covered in sheets, hung a painting covered by a black cloth. Ezra approached with slow steps. His fingers touched the cloth hesitantly. Something inside him whispered not to continue, but there was a deeper, primal force that drove him. When he pulled the fabric, time seemed to stop. It was a portrait of a seated woman in a gray period dress, surrounded by a smoky, almost unreal background. Her skin was white, her features delicate, her hair tied with a dark blue ribbon. But what stopped him in his tracks was her smile, slightly curved, subtle, almost mocking. It was the kind of smile that only someone holding a deep secret could bear. Ezra couldn't stop staring. The painting seemed to give off a subtle warmth, even in the cold of the room. For a moment, he swore he could see the painting breathing. The woman wasn't looking directly at him, but still, she seemed to be watching him. He took the work upstairs to the main studio. The space was adorned with tall windows, imported tapestries, and a black stone fireplace. The space, though sophisticated, had a claustrophobic feel, as if even beauty carried weight. He installed the painting above the fireplace, removing an old mirror with his own hands to make room for it. When he stepped away, a drop of sweat ran down his temple despite the cold. He stood there for hours, staring at the portrait in the flickering light of the flames. The next day, still affected by the presence of the painting, Ezra contacted his assistant and asked for an expert. "Look for someone who works with restoration of 19th century pieces, who has sensitivity and intuition." She returned hours later with a name, Claire Rousseau. Claire arrived 2 days later, tall, elegant, with brown hair tied back in an imperfect bun. She was dressed in black from head to toe, with gray suede gloves and a look that said she saw more than she let on. "Mr. Delacroix?" he asked, extending his hand. "Just Ezra," he replied, squeezing her tightly. She looked around. Her eyes lingered a second too long on the picture frame hanging over the fireplace. "And what about her? Does she have a name?" "Not yet," he replied. Claire approached. She slowly removed her gloves and placed her fingertips on the frame. Her eyes closed for a few moments. Ezra watched her every gesture as if he were following an unknown ceremony. "You always do this." "Only when the work watches me back." Ezra smirked. "And this one?" Claire opened her eyes. There was something strange in her tone of voice, as if she spoke reluctantly. "She listens to me." Ezra watched her set up her small portable lab in the studio. Analytical lights, solvents, fine brushes, magnifying glasses. She was meticulous, beautiful in her precision. Her gestures were almost choreographed. That night, Ezra was slow to fall asleep. When he finally closed his eyes, he felt the presence of the woman in the painting inside his room. She didn't speak, but she smiled. In the dream, he was standing in front of the painting, but the frame was no longer a limit. The woman was stepping out of it, her bare feet on the oriental rug, her eyes fixed on him. The blue ribbon slithered from her hair like a snake. She approached slowly, and when she got too close, she leaned in, whispering something he didn't understand, but which somehow excited and terrified him at the same time. Then she blinked. Ezra woke up with a start. He hurried down to the studio. The painting was intact, but there was something wrong. The blue ribbon, the little bow that tied the woman's hair, was gone. The paint had disappeared, or perhaps been removed. Morning arrived with a gray mist that covered the stained glass windows of the mansion like a veil of mourning. Ezra had slept little. The dream still pulsed in his mind like a wet memory. The woman without a ribbon, the indecipherable whisper, and above all, the impossible gesture of the painting blinking. He was waiting for Claire in the inner garden, beneath the glass structure covered in vines. On the dark iron table, 2 intact porcelain cups. The aroma of tea was slowly cooling, like everything else in that house. Claire appeared with firm steps. She was wearing a charcoal gray overcoat that contrasted with her pale skin. Her hair was tied up neatly, her eyes covered in light shadow, as if she hadn't slept. "The tape is gone," she said, before even sitting down. Ezra wasn't surprised. He knew she had felt it, that they were connected now, not just by the work, but by something more primal, deeper, a kind of symbiosis. "Did you see this in the dream?" he asked. "No, I felt it. Before I fell asleep, I saw it coming apart, as if it no longer wanted to be tamed." Claire picked up the unsweetened cup. She took a sip. "This painting is not aging. It is revealing itself." Ezra leaned back, as if anyone were still painting, or as if she were unpainting herself, to show what was always underneath. Later, in the studio, Claire set up her equipment with almost ritualistic precision. Her movements were slow, respectful, as if she were standing over a comatose patient. Ezra watched from the mezzanine, his fingers drumming lightly on the wooden railing. Claire turned on an ultraviolet light and began examining the screen. Her eyes narrowed. "There's a hidden layer beneath the varnish," she said. Ezra walked down the stairs. "A signature?" "Not exactly. An inscription. Small, almost faded." She pointed. Ezra stepped closer. In the blue light, ancient, almost needle-etched letters appeared at the bottom of the screen. "The smile that never sleeps." Claire looked at him. "Is that the title of the work? Or a warning?" Ezra muttered. That night, Claire left later than usual. Ezra had offered her dinner, but she had politely declined. Before she left, she looked at the painting one last time. "She feels lighter today," he said, as if she knows someone understands her. Ezra tilted his head, or as if he were preparing the next step. Claire laughed lightly, but there was tension in her gaze. When she was gone, Ezra didn't turn on the lights. He let the mansion darken around him, leaving only the light from the fireplace and the moon filtering through the sheer curtains in his study. He sat on the floor, facing the painting. "Who are you?" he asked softly. The woman in the painting didn't answer, but she seemed to listen. Ezra closed his eyes, and the dream invaded him like an inescapable perfume. 9 again, but this time the woman was standing. Her dress was floating as if she were underwater. She reached up to her neck, untied the blue ribbon, and let it fall to the floor. Slowly, she lifted her fingers and showed Ezra a pocket mirror. In the reflection, there was no him. There was Claire. He undressed his shoulders, bent his neck, and said, in the voice of the painting, "You've known me before, but you want me now." Ezra woke up drenched in sweat. The fireplace was out. The clock read 3:43 in the morning. He went down to the studio. The painting was still in the same place, but new detail had emerged. On the woman's neck, which had been smooth, there was now a mark, something between a bruise and a bite. He came closer. The mark looked fresh, as if it had been made that night. Ezra stepped back. He went to the sofa, sat down, and rubbed his face. But before he closed his eyes, he saw something on the ground. The blue ribbon, not painted, physical. She was there, as if it had fallen off the painting, or someone. Ezra didn't touch her, but I knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. The next day dawned with a milky, opaque light, filtered through thick clouds that swallowed the sky over the Delacroix estate. The windows of the mansion sweated inside, as if the house were breathing a silent fever. Claire walked barefoot down the east corridor, wearing only a cotton robe. her hair loose. She was restless. She had dreamed all night about the woman in the painting, but the dreams had no definite form. They were like impressions of thoughts that were not hers. He woke up with a metallic taste in his mouth, and a name he didn't recognize whispering in his mind, Seraphine. In the studio, everything looked the same. But when Claire turned on her flashlight and shone it on the surface of the painting, she felt something vibrate on her skin. The woman in the portrait was now holding a triangular shard of glass between her fingers. There was no doubt about it. It hadn't been there before. Claire knelt down slowly, without taking her eyes off the work. She took out her cell phone and took a photo. In the image, the fragment did not appear, but the mark on her neck, the same one Ezra had seen the night before, was noticeably darker, almost purple. Claire frowned. With shaking hands, she shone the flashlight over the screen again. Her own reflection appeared in the glass of the picture, and for a second, just a second, she saw her face replaced by the woman's. He took a step back, gasping. Ezra woke up to a soft knock on his bedroom door. Claire walked in, pale, with her cell phone in her hands. "We need to talk," she said. In the tea room, she showed him the photo. Ezra studied it carefully. The difference was subtle, but unmistakable. "She's changing on her own, or responding to us," Claire said quietly. "She hears us, sees us, maybe even imitates us." Ezra looked out the window, where the fog seemed unyielding. "I know that feeling, of being watched. But this is different. It's not someone watching you. It's something reading you. Like I was learning to be you," Claire finished. In the afternoon, Claire began a new round of cleaning with mild solvents. Ezra watched, now closer. The smell of the materials filled the air with notes of camphor and aged lemon. "Most works reveal cracks. This one reveals intentions," she commented. Ezra kept his eyes on the woman in the painting. There was something in her gaze now, more present, as if she had discovered a purpose. "Have you ever worked with paintings that behave like this?" he asked. "I've restored works damaged by fire, by water, by anger. But this one, it seems alive by choice, as if it knows it's being seen, and likes it." Ezra took a deep breath. "Do you know what scares me?" Claire looked at him. "That maybe it doesn't want to be restored. Maybe it wants to be continued." That night, Claire decided to sleep at the mansion, in a guest room next to the studio. Ezra didn't insist. They both knew, without saying it, that proximity was now more about security than convenience. At 3:28 in the morning, Ezra was awakened by a whisper. Not just any sound. It was a voice, Claire's voice. But it wasn't coming from her room. It was coming from the study. He stood up silently. He grabbed a robe and walked cautiously down the steps. As he pushed open the studio door, he saw Claire standing in front of the painting. She was wearing a nightgown, her hair loose, her skin slightly damp with sweat. "Claire?" he called. She turned around slowly. Her eyes were wide. She was trembling. "She showed me something," he murmured. Ezra stepped closer. He grabbed her shoulders. "What?" Claire put her hand to her neck. A mark identical to the one on the painting was beginning to appear there. "I saw myself inside the painting, and she outside." Ezra swallowed hard. "Did you let her in?" Claire shook her head, but her voice was weak. "She came in when we wanted to understand, when we opened the door, maybe when we slept." Ezra led her to the couch and wrapped her in a blanket. They stayed there in silence until the sun hit the windows. But before going to sleep, Ezra looked at the painting one last time. Now, in the woman's eyes, there was a visible reflection. It was Claire's face. Breakfast was served in the conservatory, but neither of them touched it. The silence between Claire and Ezra was thick, tense, as if they were afraid that any word they spoke might summon something. The leaves outside danced in the wind, but inside, the air remained still. Too warm, too cold, too alive. "She showed me a room that doesn't exist on a house plan," Claire said finally. Ezra looked up. What was it like? Red walls, a cracked oval mirror, and an armchair with its back to the door. She was sitting there, looking at me. But what really scared me was that, when I got closer, I saw that the woman in the chair was me. Ezra leaned back. "We're getting confused. Or she's merging us," Claire muttered. That afternoon, Ezra decided to rummage through the mansion's old archives. In the basement of the library, among boxes of yellow documents and dry leather folders, he found an unexpected item. A purchase agreement dated 1901. Object: portrait of the lady with the blue veil. Artist unknown. Condition: unstable work. Instructions: never remove from original frame. Risk of partial opening. Ezra flipped through a few more pages and found a black and white photo of the painting. There was a difference. In the old version, the woman held a blue ribbon in her hands. It was not in her hair, nor was it an adornment. The ribbon appeared to have been removed as a symbol. Below the image, and written in French, "The sourness there is a piety that is endure me. The smile is a sleeping trap." Ezra ran down to the basement, where some of the house's furniture and historic objects had been stored since his grandfather's generation. In a felt-lined box, he found the painting's original frame. Dark and cherry wood, heavy, with metal fittings at all four corners. But the most curious thing was the internal closing system. It was a capsule frame, made to imprison the canvas, to seal it. When she returned to the studio with the frame in her hands, Claire immediately looked up. "Where did you find this?" It was hidden under the floorboards, as if they wanted to make sure no one would ever use it again. Claire stepped closer, running her fingertips over the dark wood. "This is not decoration. It is containment." Ezra nodded. "What if we put it back? Maybe it will stop changing. Maybe it will return to its original state. Or maybe we awaken what was sealed." Claire looked at him. There was fear, but also desire. "Are we doing this together?" "Always." That night, they cleaned the frame with natural solvents, fitted the painting inside, fastened the four metal clasps, and listened, with a simultaneous shiver, to the dry snap of the final click. At that moment, the lights in the mansion flickered, the flames in the fireplace flickered, and the grandfather clock paused for 5 seconds before starting its ticking again. Claire rested her forehead on Ezra's shoulder. "She knows." Ezra put his arm around her. "I know." In the early hours of the morning, Claire had a nosebleed. Ezra woke up with the sheets soaked in sweat and scratch marks on his arms that he didn't remember getting. As he left the room, he noticed something strange in the hallway, a faint trail of blue petals. He followed them. They took it to the studio. Claire stood there, dressed in a dark robe. Her bare feet were covered in dust. She stared at the painting. Ezra approached slowly. "Claire?" She turned slowly. Her gaze was dull. Her mouth was half open. She didn't leave. "What do you mean?" "The painting is locked." But she left before that. Ezra stepped even closer. "So where is it now?" Claire placed her hand over her chest. "Here." Ezra rested his forehead against hers. Their eyes were both closed. They breathed as if they were one organism. "What if she tries to take us from the inside?" he whispered. Claire responded with a silent kiss, long, hot, and behind them, on the sealed screen, the smile was different, no more mocking, but triumphant. The morning dawned gray and cold. The windows of the mansion were fogged up inside, as if the house itself had been crying during the night. Ezra woke early, bothered by a strange feeling of lightness, as if something that should have been there inside him had escaped. He walked down to the studio in silence. The original frame was still on the fireplace. The screen was perfectly fitted, with no signs of damage. But the portrait, it was empty. The woman's figure had disappeared. Ezra stood there, motionless, staring at the raw fabric. It was impossible. No solvent had been used. The canvas was undamaged, just uninhabited. Claire came down a few minutes later, still wearing a silk robe. When she saw the painting, she gave a slight gasp. She approached it with slow steps, as if approaching a desecrated altar. "She's gone," he said. "No," Ezra replied. "She left." Claire touched the screen. It was warm. "This is not an escape. It is a transfer." Ezra turned to her, his face pale. "Are you saying she entered someone?" Claire hesitated. "In us." The rest of the day passed like a fragmented dream. Claire retreated to room 9. Ezra wandered the halls, feeling like a shadow in his own house. His thoughts were not his own. Voices whispered in the distance, not with words, but with feelings. Memories he never had, images he never experienced. When he looked in the mirror in the main hall, he saw something strange. Behind his reflection, someone was watching him. When he turned around, there was no one there. But the scent of the blue ribbon, now absent from the painting, hung in the air. Ezra returned to the old library and picked up the Codex of the Presence. He spent hours deciphering symbols and notes in the margins of the pages. At one point, he came across a passage in Latin. Illum quae relicta est, si invocator non mene, in alio habitat. That which was left, if invoked, does not remain. It dwells in another. Ezra slammed the book shut. His hands were shaking. He immediately went up to Claire's room. She was standing in front of the mirror, with her back turned, with her nightgown half open, revealing part of her neck. Ezra walked closer. "Claire?" She turned around slowly, her eyes watering. "I saw through her, Ezra. I saw memories that weren't mine. A man, maybe the artist, begging her to stop changing, to remain just paint." Ezra came closer. He touched her face. "What does she want now?" "A body." "Yours?" Claire closed her eyes. 2 tears fell. Maybe ours. That night, they didn't sleep. They sat in the library with the lights off, leaving only the fireplace crackling. Ezra opened a bottle of red wine. They both drank in silence, watching the shadows dance on the walls. "I don't know where I end and she begins anymore," Ezra said finally. Claire held his hand. "What if love is the only thing that can dissolve this? Do you believe that?" "No." She laughed sadly. "But I need to believe in something that won't devour us." Later, Claire got up to go to the bathroom. When she looked in the mirror, she saw her own reflection, smiling. But she wasn't smiling. The mirror flickered. She blinked. The smile disappeared. He bent down to wash his face. And when he looked up again, the reflection was no longer hers. It was the woman in the painting, but with her face, partly hers. Claire backed away, screaming. Ezra appeared immediately. "Claire, what happened?" She pointed at the mirror, but now there was only emptiness. She was shaking. "She wants me, and if she keeps going like this, she'll get it." Ezra hugged her. "Then let's go after her." "What if it's late?" He stared at her. "So we paint a new ending. An ending where she doesn't win." In the studio, the painting was still empty, but as the moonlight filtered through the window pane, an outline slowly began to emerge in the lower right corner. A new body. This time, it wasn't the woman's. It was Ezra's. The night was thick, as if the world had forgotten to dawn. The walls of the mansion seemed closer, heavier, as if the air itself were turning solid. In the study, Ezra lit candles with shaking hands, as if each flame could illuminate parts of what was left of him. The canvas, still held in its old frame, no longer showed the woman. But now, a new figure slowly emerged, the male body outlined in soft lines, the face forming. Ezra recognized himself in that outline, as if he were being painted from the inside out. Claire sat in the armchair facing him, her hands in her lap, watching silently. Her eyes hadn't blinked in minutes. It was as if she were hypnotized, or worse, torn between two worlds. "She's painting me," Ezra murmured, with her features. Claire didn't respond. "Claire?" She blinked. She woke from her trance, as if she had emerged from underwater. She took a deep breath. "Sorry, I was listening." "Listening to what?" "A name." Again. "Seraphine." Ezra sat down beside her. "That name appeared to me too. In dreams." "I think that's her name," Claire said. "Before she was a painting. Before she was a presence." "And why does she want to capture me now?" Claire looked at him, her eyes watering. "Because you saw her truly. You desired her. And maybe she thinks this is love." Ezra ran his hands through his hair, exhausted. "So she wants to be remembered by me. She wants to be you. Because you are remembered." Silence. "How do we stop it?" Claire hesitated. Then she replied, "We don't stop it. We complete it." Ezra frowned. "Do you want to finish the portrait?" "Yes. Paint you whole. And inside the painting, put you behind. Small. Hidden. Like a shadow. A whisper." Ezra looked at the painting. The face was not yet defined, but the eyes were already open. "What if that traps us there too? Maybe it's the only way to get her out of here." Claire prepared the paints. Ezra stripped to the waist. He sat motionless, his eyes fixed on her as she painted with intensity, with restrained fury, as if each stroke were an exorcism. The figure on the screen was forming, but something was wrong. The shadow in the background grew by itself. She didn't paint it, but it was there. "Ezra," she murmured. "I know." When the last stroke was made, Claire collapsed, sweaty, shaking, breathing heavily. Ezra took a cloth and gently wiped her face. "It's done," she said through tears. "You're on the screen, and she's where she belongs, behind you. Small, faceless." Ezra looked at the painting. Something about it seemed peaceful. She can't smile without a face. Claire hugged him. And now it only exists if we allow it to exist. In the early hours of the morning, Ezra woke up with a throbbing pain in his chest. He went to the bathroom mirror. He was paler. In his eyes, a shadow that wasn't his. Behind him, in the reflection, the woman, Seraphine, walked slowly down a hallway he didn't recognize. He turned around. Nothing there. He turned to the mirror. She stopped. She smiled. But then something changed. A hand appeared in the mirror, grabbed her arm, and pulled her into a dark, bottomless frame. Claire. She appeared from behind, within the painting, sealing Seraphine in a gray, opaque background. Ezra drew back, gasping, and then the image disappeared. Claire woke up with him beside her. He told her what he saw. She took his hand, squeezing it tightly. "She can only enter if there's space." And he pushed her out. "No, I painted a door." Ezra looked at her, confused. "Where on the screen?" Claire smiled sadly. "In my own memory." The painting was still there, above the fireplace. Ezra Delacroix, seated, eyes open. And behind, far in the background, a faceless figure, faded, withered. Seraphine wasn't smiling anymore, but the eyes of the painting still looked alive. The day dawned with a sharp wind, blowing through the cracks in the windows as if trying to reach the secrets that still resisted within the mansion. There was peace, yes, but it was a fragile peace, like the thin layer of ice on a lake about to break. Ezra had been in the studio since before sunrise. He stared at the finished painting with a mixture of fascination and exhaustion. The portrait was true to life. Her body, her hands, her intense gaze. But there was something about the painted eyes that bothered him. They were too attentive, too alive. Claire entered silently. She was wearing dark jeans, a white shirt, and her hair tied back with a pencil. She looked like a different person, more assertive, more present, but in her eyes, there was still the abyss they had faced together. "Did you sleep?" she asked. Ezra shook his head, not taking his eyes off the painting. "The eyes aren't mine." Claire approached, looking cautiously. "They are yours, but also hers. You carry part of her now, and she part of you." Ezra swallowed hard. "Do you think this will ever go away?" "No, but it will transform. Every intense presence becomes a shadow, then a memory. One day, perhaps only a subtle mark will remain." She touched the frame, like a signature that no one can see. Later, as Claire was organizing her brushes, a delivery man rang the doorbell. Ezra answered it himself. The man didn't say much. He just held out a small package, wrapped in dark paper and tied with a gray bow. No sender. Claire opened it. It was a mirror, oval, antique, with carved copper edges. She exchanged glances with Ezra. "That mirror, it's the vision." She held it carefully, as if it were a radioactive piece. Attached to the back was a handwritten note. "You painted her, but she still watches." Claire turned the mirror to face herself. Nothing. Then to Ezra. Also nothing. Then they hung it on the wall opposite the painting, and they waited. That night they sat in the library. Wine, fireplace, silence. "What if she comes back?" Ezra asked. Claire looked at him, unafraid. "Then we paint another ending for her, until there is no longer enough canvas to contain her, or until we accept that it has always been a part of us." She leaned against his chest. "Do you still remember the name?" Ezra hesitated. "Seraphine." Claire nodded, but didn't say anything. At 3:43 a.m., the oval mirror made a soft cracking sound. The surface seemed to tremble. Ezra, awake, went to the study. The painting remained unchanged. But in the mirror, he saw Claire, not as she was now, but as the woman in the painting. She wore the blue ribbon. She was sitting in the vision chair. His eyes, reflected, were closed. He blinked, and when he looked again, everything was gone. But in the lower corner of the mirror, almost imperceptible, there was a line, like a smile. In the morning, Ezra didn't tell Claire anything. Instead, he took her out into the garden. They walked among the moss-covered statues and the rose bushes that resisted the cold. "We can live with that," he said. "We can. Do you think she still wants to possess us?" Claire stopped. "No. I think now she wants to be considered as art." Claire looked at him, like trauma. Ezra smiled slightly and took her hand. "Then let's give it a place, a name, a limit." She kissed him softly. "And follow ours." That night, the painting was given a new frame, made by Claire. It was carved with symbols of containment, with a small mirror embedded in the top, facing inward, so that if she wanted to look, she would be forced to see herself. Ezra smiled. Now she is a prisoner of her own reflection. Claire rested her head on his shoulder. The smile that never sleeps will finally rest. But somewhere in the house, in a forgotten mirror behind a door, between time and silence, a new reflex began to form. The house seemed to breathe more easily. Since the protective frame had been completed and the interior mirror had been installed, the atmosphere had changed. The hallways no longer murmured, the furniture seemed to rest, and the wood floor itself creaked less, as if even time had been calmed. Ezra and Claire walked through the garden, hands clasped, saying little. Life was now measured in comfortable silences, and the strange peace of surviving, something they could never explain. The painting remained in the studio, under soft lighting, watched over by a subtle system of mirrors, positioned not to reflect, but to disperse. She was still there, seraphine, but different, small, shadow, almost erased in the background of the screen, behind Ezra's figure, like a stubborn memory, without voice, without control. "Do you think she still feels it?" Claire asked. One afternoon, when the wind blew too hard, Ezra took a while to respond. "Yes, you do. But for the first time, you don't feel it above us. You feel it from within, like a trapped longing." Claire nodded, like a love that didn't know what to be. That night, a fierce storm broke over the city. Lightning streaked across the sky, and the sound of thunder reverberated within the walls like ancient drums. Ezra woke up at 3:43 a.m. The time seemed chosen. He went down to the studio, guided by a hunch. The painting remained untouched, but the oval mirror on the opposite wall had rotated. He was facing the fireplace. Ezra stepped closer. The fire's reflection flickered, but something called to him. Inside the mirror, amidst the flames, he saw a face. No seraphine. It was him. Older, with wrinkles he hadn't yet, with eyes that seemed to know truths Ezra hadn't yet learned. And behind him, Claire, younger, smiling. Ezra blinked. The reflection was gone. In its place, only fire. The next morning, Claire walked into the studio and found Ezra painting. He hadn't done that in years. On the screen, a scene. The mansion seen from outside, amidst the fog. And in the window of room 9, a female figure looking in, never out. Claire approached. "Are you going to finish?" Ezra smiled. "No, I just want her to keep looking, but never leave." Claire kissed him on the shoulder. The strongest prison is the one the soul builds out of love. Months later, the mansion discreetly opened its doors to artistic tours. No advertising, no itineraries, just a silent invitation to those who knew how to look. In the center of the studio, protected by a double frame and special glass, a single painting attracted all eyes, the smile that never sleeps. The work was complex. A seated man, Ezra, a figure in the background, and an atmosphere so dense that some visitors swore they felt the air change as they approached. "Looks like she's about to speak," a woman murmured. "Or smile," said another. "Or maybe wake up," said a third. But no one has ever seen the figure in its entirety, because she only really appeared for those who had already dreamed about her.